Released back in 2020, Doom Eternal is one of the best optimized games I have ever played. Developed by ID Software using the ID Tech 7, the game still looks absolutely stunning today, with incredible visuals and unforgettable soundtracks. But the best part is that we can push performance even further without sacrificing visual quality. So, without wasting any time, let's get started. Starting with image quality, the game uses TAA by default, and it cannot be disabled unless you enable upscaling. Doom Eternal only includes DLSS 2, and because it uses an older version of DLSS, it does not hold up particularly well by today's standards. I highly recommend upgrading to DLSS 4 instead. If you want to know how to do that, check out my video linked in the description. As you can see, the default TAA image looks quite shimmery. DLSS 2 improves image stability significantly, but it is still not perfect. DLSS 4 delivers a much cleaner image with better clarity, reduced shimmering, and a more natural look without over-sharpening seen in older versions. In terms of performance, switching from TAA to DLSS 4 on the quality preset costs only around 3%, which is a very small trade-off for the substantial improvement in image quality. The game also offers resolution scaling with two modes, static and dynamic. Static allows you to manually set the internal rendering resolution, while dynamic automatically adjusts the resolution to maintain a target frame rate that you specify. This feature can provide a noticeable performance boost, but image quality degrades quite quickly. Even at 67% of 1080p, game begins to look very soft and loses a significant amount of detail. Because of this, I do not recommend using resolution scaling unless you are playing at higher resolutions or do not have the option to enable DLSS. For most players with compatible GPUs, I strongly recommend using DLSS 4 instead. Moving on to textures, texture pool size controls the maximum texture resolution. This setting has little to no impact on performance. For GPUs with 4 GB, I recommend using the low preset to avoid memory limitations. If you have 6 GB, 8 GB, or more, you can safely set this option to Ultra. Next is texture filtering quality, which improves the clarity and sharpness of textures viewed at angles, such as floors and walls stretching into the distance. This setting has a very small performance cost of only around 1 to 2%, so I recommend setting it to Ultra. Moving on to shadow quality, this setting controls the resolution and detail of shadows. In terms of performance, increasing shadow quality from low to high costs only around 2%, while raising it to Ultra and the higher presets can reduce performance by roughly 5%. Since the high preset already delivers decent looking shadows, I recommend using high. Moving on to the lighting settings, light's quality has almost no performance impact, even when increasing it from low all the way to Ultra. At the same time, it provides a noticeable improvement to overall scene lighting and helps environments look much more vibrant and realistic. Because of this, I recommend setting light's quality to Ultra. For directional occlusion, this setting adds depth to the scene by enhancing ambient shading and also improves indirect lighting, making surfaces and objects blend more naturally into their surroundings. In my testing, directional occlusion has little to no measurable performance impact, so I recommend keeping this setting at Ultra. Moving on to reflection quality, this setting has a surprisingly large impact on the overall look of Doom Eternal. In terms of performance, increasing reflection quality from off all the way to Ultra costs only around 2.5%. Because of this, I recommend using Ultra. Moving on to geometric quality, this setting controls the level of detail. The visual impact of this setting is relatively subtle and is mostly noticeable during comparisons. Even the low preset looks perfectly acceptable during actual gameplay, primarily because this option adjusts geometric complexity rather than LOD transition distances, so it does not introduce obvious pop-in or distracting level of detail changes. In terms of performance, increasing geometric quality from low to high costs around 3%, while pushing it to ultra and higher presets can reduce performance by approximately 10%. So I recommend using high for the best balance between visuals and performance. Next up is water quality. This setting enables screen space reflections on reflective surfaces, such as water and blood. Because the reflections are rendered at half resolution and then blended into the scene. This approach keeps the performance impact extremely low, but it can also introduce noticeable artifacts in visual noise. In terms of performance, raising water quality from low to ultra costs only around 1%. Because the artifacts may be distracting to some players, this setting ultimately comes down to personal preference. If you find the SSR artifacts irritating, keep water quality on low. Otherwise, ultra is a good choice if you want the additional reflective detail. Moving on to volumetric quality, this setting controls the resolution volumetric effects. In terms of performance, raising volumetric quality from low to ultra costs only around 3%, so I recommend ultra. Moving on to the effects settings, for particles quality. After testing this setting in a variety of scenarios, this is the only noticeable visual difference I was able to find, and even then, the change is quite subtle during normal gameplay. In terms of performance, low and ultra perform identically, with no measurable difference in frame rate, so I recommend setting particles quality to ultra. Next is decal quality. In just particles, this also shows no noticeable visual difference between the presets, and performance remained identical across all settings. So I recommend ultra. Now moving on to post-processing settings. Motion blur has a small performance impact of around 2%, while chromatic aberration, film grain, and depth of field have no measurable impact on performance. In terms of visual quality, I recommend keeping depth of field and chromatic aberration enabled if you prefer the game's intended cinematic presentation. Film grain, however, tends to make the image look softer and less clear, so I suggest disabling it entirely for a cleaner and sharper picture. Motion blur is largely a matter of personal preference. Since its performance cost is minimal, you can leave it enabled if you enjoy the added sense of speed and smoothness. After testing every graphic setting, here are my optimized settings. One thing I almost forgot to mention, if you are using an FPS monitoring overlay such as Afterburner, make sure to keep Present from Compute enabled. Disabling this option causes the overlay to disappear. Now, let's see how these optimized settings compare to the Ultra Nightmare preset. As you can see, optimized settings deliver approximately 18% better performance compared to Ultra Nightmare, while maintaining nearly identical visual quality. The difference becomes even more significant in outdoor areas, where the performance gap can increase to as much as 30%. So with that said, if you found this video helpful, please consider subscribing to the channel, and let me know in the comments which game you would like to see optimized next.